Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 10th of February 2014. So in today's news we really only have a few things, honestly. There are a few site tweaks on battle.net, then the Love is in the Air Valentine's Day holiday event is on, and then finally I'll round it off with a few tweets and then a little bit of talk about Elder Scrolls Online because a bunch of press NDAs were lifted. Well, the NDA was on a beta that I was not involved in. I can confirm that much, but it's still an interesting thing to talk about. So first of all, site tweaks. Well, what is this? This is something I actually did not notice until I saw it on MMO Champion. Basically, they showed an addition to the Battle.net website, which is apparently to do with the Warlords of Draenor pre-order page. Now, this does suggest that the pre-orders are going to be happening rather soon. And this certainly would make sense because if you have the pre-order page and then all the level 90s, the new fresh boosted ones, and then the new PvP season all happening in around the same time, that'll be a decent little stimulus package for the game. So yeah, I think they're definitely going to use this level 90 boost at a time where they can leverage it as much as possible. I think that the decision to make the pre-order bonuses be applied to the game earlier are definitely there to sort of help tide the game over until the next expansion, because 5.4.7 is fine for basically only the PvP community. The PvE people don't get much else. That said, it is a great time to start trying to play some PvP. But yeah, it's interesting though. It really is such a dry spot in World of Warcraft stuff at the minute, even in terms of news. I don't know, I'd like to, maybe in a few months after Warlords of Draenor finally does come out, I'd like to see if Blizzard communicate the idea of perhaps patch 5.5 not existing being a mistake, or not being a mistake. I'd like to know what they end up thinking, a bit of a post-mortem on that, because the lack of new PvE content is definitely kind of hard. We did go through Pandaria with a new bit of PvE content every 3 months. It's now getting beyond that, and there isn't anything. Of course, back in the day, it used to be like this. You would get a raid tier every 6 months, and that was it. But I guess with these end raid tiers, they can often feel a bit longer because there's no real, there's no new content on the horizon in terms of the current raiding tiers and expansion. But, oh well, I think it'll work out fine, and it should be fun to get this pre-order sort of thing done. Also, of course, if you pre-order the Digital Deluxe Edition, you will get you'll get the Raven Lord mount and then a little pet, which is pretty cool, and you'll get those instantly. I'm not too sure exactly how much the digital pre-order is, and honestly I don't know if I'll be getting it, mainly because I want to get the Collector's Edition, like the physical one. I've always got them for WoW, and they look really damn nice. I just wish there was a way that you could pre-order the physical Collector's Edition and then get the digital bonuses immediately, but I think I may just have to bite the bullet on that one. Anyway, next we have Love is in the Air. That's the holiday that's going on for the next while, and really, I just don't have time to make a guide for the lot of yous. I think the best place that you can find information, though, is definitely WoW. They have a very comprehensive guide that goes through just about everything. If you want the quick sort of version, the abridged version of the guide for this, you can get 480 Nax from the holiday boss. There is a main quest line that you can find and do. Then there are basically a whole bunch of things, like daily quests and stuff like that. If you want to find out where all those things are, A, go to WoW, or B, just go to a main city, talk to one of the NPCs there, and they will give you a breadcrumb quest to the main area for the Love is in the Air holiday event. And that is pretty much it. You can also get a big pink rocket from the holiday boss, which is kind of fun. And of course, you can queue up for that using the Dungeon Finder, which is very handy. Anyway, so next, let's move on to the tweets. We are definitely making our way quickly through the news today. Celestian said that they are going to be combining some abilities rather than killing them off totally. This makes absolute sense, honestly, and yeah, there's a lot of abilities which honestly could be rolled together and there wouldn't be much of a gameplay effect. Let's just talk about, I don't know, a hunter example. So it used to be that we would have to apply Hunter's Mark to something and then we could start killing it, which is fine, we'd get our buff. But then, I think someone at Blizzard just realized that that just doesn't make much sense. So now Hunter's Mark is just applied by, and I think renewed by, Cobra Shot, or I don't know, one of our abilities. Basically, it happens automatically. I don't know what ability because I never need to know. Now, that is very useful, but that general principle should be something that is that they carry forward with a lot more abilities. Because really, there's sometimes when you hitting 5 and then 6 in your keyboard to do 2 separate abilities right after each other doesn't make sense when, if those abilities are always going to be cast right after each other, they could be rolled into one spell, in some cases. Now, of course, if they were to reduce button bloat by doing basically this only, it would lead to some very strange and contrived abilities, but I think this is definitely a very good tool in the repertoire for dealing with button bloat, and honestly, I think it's probably one of the better ones. I like the idea of merging and augmenting spells rather than getting rid of them, because a lot of the actual just like gameplay that is created by those spells isn't lost. Maybe it's rolled into something else, but it's not gone. It's a bit like with Eyes of the Beast with Hunters. That was a really fun ability, and they just took it away, which made no sense because it's not the sort of ability that you even put on your action bars anyway. So yeah, one thing I'd like to say, or ask more, is if you are playing a class, I don't know, other than a hunter, something I'm not used to, what sort of abilities do you think like they could merge together? More importantly, like if you are playing at a high level or you're a raider, I'd really like to know. Because, well, just the more informed my opinions are, and the better I can make the shows and stuff like that. So yeah, next we have a tweet from Watcher who said that when coming up with a boss, they usually start with a model or a theme. And that sometimes they do start with a mechanic first, like with Chimeron, the whole Finkel Idlehorn, I think that's his name, mechanic. But mainly they do just start off with a boss model or a theme. I think that's probably the right way to go about things. If you just start off with like one mechanic, then like having a boss just built solely around one mechanic can work great from gameplay sometimes, but sometimes it just makes the bosses kind of feel contrived and weird. And let's just say, I don't know, Malkorok. They took Malkorok and they thought, what is this guy? Right, he's a giant, pumped up orc. And then they made a boss or a fight that really fits that aesthetic well. So I think that's definitely a pretty cool way to do it. And honestly, to me it sounds like a really fun task, just being presented with a character or a boss model and being said, right, you need to go make a boss fight around this. Encounter design really is interesting, and I think that Blizzard are the people that are basically hands down the best at it in the industry. There's never been another MMO that I've played in which boss fights have been as good as World of Warcraft. I think a lot of people probably hear me being critical of a lot of different aspects of the game. I think that's important, but like the one thing that World of Warcraft will pretty much always have for me is the boss fights, because they're just so damn good. So yeah, there's that. Let's move on to another tweet. It's from Watcher, and he said that more information about the current crop of challenge mode dungeons will be coming out soon, and more specifically, what's going to happen to them when we move into Warlords of Draenor. Of course, they are going to be adding new ones in Warlords, but it's just hard to know what will actually happen to the old Mists of Pandaria ones. I think it doesn't particularly make sense that they stay at level 90 in one way, and the reason I think that is because the whole point of a challenge mode is that it's hard with normalized gear and all that stuff. But if you go in there at level 100 with the additional stats, and then perhaps the additional, well, you know, abilities and that kind of thing, then they are objectively perhaps going to be a little bit easier. Now, I suppose this could be sorted out by item level scaling. They can already scale your level and various things like that. So perhaps they just keep these level 90 Mists of Pandaria challenge modes at level 90, but when you go into them, you are scaled to level 90. So if you go in with level 100, then the only advantages you have are maybe the 1 or 2 extra talents or abilities, or like, you know, similar things that you could possibly have. Now that's a pretty decent way of doing it, and actually it shouldn't take that much work. They did previously say that the way they do scaling is not really too work intensive, and that it's just a really nice sort of elegant system. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. Next, lore confirmed that the boosted characters will indeed get item level 483 gear. And that is it for the World of Warcraft news. One thing I'm just going to quickly gloss over is Elder Scrolls Online and the press. They released, well, relinquished, I guess, the NDA a few days ago for press people only, and only on a specific beta test. So that's led to a lot of information coming out, and honestly, it mimics what I have heard, and yeah, okay, basically, I'm only going to be talking about the press people, and you can probably guess why, because if I weren't under an NDA, which I cannot confirm that I am or am not, then I would not be able to talk about it. So, yeah. Anyway, what have the press people said about this game? Well, I think the best roundup was actually given by the people at PC Gamer. I recommend looking up their YouTube channel and video, but essentially they were saying that the MMO parts and the Elder Scrolls parts of the game are to the detriment of each other. The whole thing about an Elder Scrolls game, right, and this is what I always do, and then I don't follow the main quest line immediately. I go off, I get a horse, and I explore. You can't do that in Elder Scrolls Online, though, because it's an MMO with an MMO structure with a linear progression of zone to zone to zone. So that's one major concern that I heard from a lot of people. In terms of graphics, I've also heard that it kind of, well, and of course, this is just seen actually based on my personal opinion in trailers. I honestly think that they tried to go with the Elder Scrolls aesthetic, but because it's an MMO, it just looks a bit shit. I'm always going to prefer the stylized version of things, though. Like, I'd rather have the World of Warcraft or the WildStar aesthetic, so I guess that's just a personal thing. But I've seen basically mixed opinions from the press about what the game looks like. Some have said, yeah, it looks really great, it's the most beautiful MMO ever, and then some people have said it just kind of looks okay. A lot of people also did basically communicate the idea that the game feels like it may be a few years old. And if you don't know, this game was actually, like, this thing's been in development for a long time, like 6-7 years, maybe more. Basically, it's been in development in some capacity since just a little bit after Oblivion, which is insane. And I think that probably in terms of just some of the MMO things about it, it does feel like that. Basically, some people said that it's like they had an MMO at 2009 or 10 or whatever, and then Skyrim came out, and then they spent the remaining time trying to make it feel and play and look like Skyrim. And from what I can tell anyway, it just kind of doesn't. It's like a coat of paint that they put over it, but not really. It doesn't really feel like Skyrim according to some of the press people. I think in terms of like going around doing the odd Elder Scrolls-y quest and reading up lore books and interacting with characters, things like that, it does feel like Skyrim, but some people said that the combat system perhaps didn't. And honestly, from looking at some of the gameplay trailers and then the B-roll footage on those different press websites, the combat just looks really floaty, and it doesn't look like it has much weight to it. It's weird. I don't know. Look, we'll have to see exactly what the game is like, but I'm definitely a bit worried, and I think when, just, you know what, go watch the PC Gamer video, go into the YouTube search, type in PC Gamer, and I think those guys have probably got, I don't know, they certainly seem to make a lot of sense with what they say. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, that's pretty much it for today's Warcraft Daily. By the way, sorry, there's going to be a few shows when I'm really tired when I do them, like when I just wake up, because that's the only time of the day that I do have in which I can do Warcraft Daily, so sorry that will happen at times. This just happens to be one of those days, so this is probably going to be the odd time where I mince up a word or don't have the most perfectly formed sentences. That's why. Anyway, that is it for the show. If you want to help me out, you can check out my Patreon page. It's a handy way just to help with some tech upgrades and things that I couldn't otherwise not afford. So there's that. My social media links are also in the description. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.